Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins at yourblackworld.com, and I'd love to bring people to you who inspire me and also people who I know are going to inspire you. And the next person that I'm interviewing today is Dr. Jennifer Caudle, who is an amazing human being. She's really accomplished a lot in her life. She is not just a physician. That's sort of the fine print in her achievements, but she's also formerly Miss Iowa, right? And also she is. I want to make sure I got it right. That's how bad I am. I get Iowa and Idaho mixed up. Those states with lots and lots of people who aren't black. And she's also an accomplished musician. She's trained at a very high level in the arts, and so. Besides being a triple threat, she's kind of an all-around high achiever, and she's one of the experts that I want to go to with Your Black World because, as you know, my goal is not to tell you what to think. My goal is to encourage you to think by presenting people to you who might inspire you to think about life in a different way. So the first thing I want to ask is, how are you today, Dr. Caudle?
I'm great. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you. Now, what I'll do is, I guess, with you, it's one thing that's interesting about interviewing you is that it's sort of hard to figure out exactly where to start because you have done so much. And I just, I was really impressed from the minute I saw your bio and heard about you. Let's start with your career as a physician. What is your specialty? And what is your background in terms of where you went to school and what you do what you've done up until this point?
Sure. My specialty is family medicine. I'm a board-certified family physician. I went to school on the East Coast. I went to Princeton undergrad, and then I stayed in New Jersey for med school and residency at the University of Medicine and Dentistry in New Jersey. So that's where I did my training. After that, I spent 2 years in Baltimore. I was a part-time instructor of medicine at Johns Hopkins. I was also a faculty member in the Johns Hopkins Sinai Hospital residency in internal medicine. So I did some teaching. I saw patients. I did sort of a lot of different things there. And right now, I'm working in aerospace medicine at the Little Rock Air Force Base in Arkansas, which is a little bit different, but quite fascinating, I have to say.
Wow.
But yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I tell you, really interesting.
Well, yeah. Last time I checked, Johns Hopkins doesn't exactly hire mediocre physicians, right? They tend to hire pretty good doctors, right? So if you're affiliated with Johns Hopkins, that means you're kind of the cream of the crop. My sister actually did. I remember being very excited when she was an undergrad because she was able to do a summer program at Johns Hopkins, and that's all it was a summer program, but it was huge for her. And then she did her master's, so this odd master's thing in the middle of medical school at the Mayo Clinic, and I remember her being excited about that. So when I think about the sort of the leading hospitals in America, I think of Johns and the Mayo Clinic, although I'm sure you know of others that are just as good. And so I think that I bring that up to impress upon people that, we're talking about a person, Jennifer Caudle, who has pursued excellence her whole entire life. And so now I want to jump over and we're going to jump back to medicine because you do a lot of really important work in the medical field, publicly and privately, that I think people should know about. But let's jump over to music. Okay, so we're casually talking, and you just sort of throw out this thing about performing in a concert with musical instruments or something, or as part of an orchestra. Please fill me in. I want to nail down the details, but it really freaked me out because I'm thinking I thought she was a doctor, but here now she is not just a regular musician, like I play my guitar on the weekends, but a musician that's actually performing for people. So please describe that for me.
Sure. Well, it's pretty, for me, it's something I've done all my life. I started playing the cello when I was in fourth grade. I started in the public school system in Iowa. I was born and raised in Davenport, Iowa. That was my hometown. And, in fourth grade, they took around instruments and said, do you want to play something and what do you want to play? And that's what I chose. So I started playing in the public schools. I loved orchestra, and I just kept doing it. I played piano also during that time. My mother was a music teacher growing up. I come from a family of teachers, so it's sort of in my blood. But I really loved orchestra, and I loved, my friends were in orchestra, and I sort of grew up in a musical environment. So it was second nature. I did it all through high school and college, actually. My last 2 years of high school, I left Iowa and I went to a boarding school right outside of Boston called Little Hill School for the Arts, which is a performing arts school for young artists, whether they be musicians or dancers or actors and actresses, etc. It was almost like the movie Fame. If you've ever seen the movie Fame, and how
I remember Leroy on Fame. That's all I remember. I remember Leroy because he had the braids. That's all I remember about Fame. And I think wasn't Debbie Leroy Allen too in there somewhere or something? Yeah. Okay, yeah, Debbie Allen and Leroy. That's what I remember.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad start. So you remember it. So it's sort of like that movie. But I in my last 2 years of high school at that school, I practiced cello 8 hours a day. I was taking classes, of course, but I was also playing in orchestras in Boston. It was fantastic. And it's something that I always have continued, even in college and afterwards. You know, I knew I wanted to be a doctor at some point. Just didn't know how it would fit in. But music is so important to me, and I still play. And I'm still involved with arts organizations. I'm on the board of trustees at Walnut Hill School, and I do a lot of other arts advocacy. So it's really important to me.
Oh, wow. Okay, and you actually perform for people periodically,
yeah.
Right?
In orchestras, yeah. When I was in Baltimore, I played with the Johns Hopkins Chamber Symphony. You know, when I was in med school, I played with the South Jersey Philharmonic. So sort of whatever city I'm in, either for training or for a job, I find some, you know, orchestra somewhere, a chamber group. And when I was in med school, I also had a string quartet, and we played for weddings and stuff like that. So, you know, I still play. The question is how much and where, you know, depending on where I happen to be.
Well, you know, I do that with basketball. Like when I lived in Chicago, I played for the Bulls, and I went to Milwaukee, so I played for the Bucks. You know, that's just what I do. You know, just that you're not the only person who's got some swag here. So just back up. Just kidding. You know, I admire that so much. I think that is so remarkable. And so what I want to jump over to the area that, you know, I get a sense that that's obviously not your greatest achievement, but I think it's interesting and intriguing and extraordinary. You also just happened to be Miss Iowa, 1999. Now, okay, so you've gotten all this, you know, high level training as a musician. You are in college, and remind me, you went to Princeton, is that correct, for undergrad?
I did.
Okay. So you got Princeton undergrad, and you're planning on becoming a doctor. At Johns Hopkins one day, right? Okay. And somehow in the middle of that, you just say, you know, I think I'm going to go and become a Miss Iowa. Not runner-up Miss Iowa, which is hard enough. Not Miss Paducah County. Not, you know, not the winner of the pageant at the county fair, but the winner of Miss Iowa, which is to many people a lifetime achievement. I mean, there are some 50-year-old women somewhere whose greatest achievement ever was I was Miss California or whatever. So I just think that's really amazing. So tell me about that. How did you just even end up in that area at all? I mean, what did your parents say, and how did you prepare? Just tell us about that.
Well, it's a good question. I didn't grow up wanting to be in pageants. And I think when I was growing up, not that I had a negative view of pageants, but I was a little skeptical. You know, you hear the news, you see the TV shows, and you hear about pageants. And I wasn't sure what they were all about, and I didn't know if it was something that was right for me. I was not a pageant girl growing up. I was a musician. I wasn't into pageants at all, and actually, I was in college. I was a sophomore at Princeton, and I'd come home for spring break or maybe Easter break or something. I was at church with my parents, and a family friend came up to us and actually came up to my mom and said, you know, the Miss Scott County pageant, that's the local pageant. So the Miss Scott County pageant is happening, and we need, you know, people to compete, and your daughter plays the cello. Would you be interested? Something you should know, and this is what I didn't know at that time, is there's different pageants. You know, the Miss America organization, which is the organization I competed in, is different than Miss USA, is different than other organizations. Miss America is the world's largest scholarship organization for women, and I didn't know that, and that was a big deal for me. I needed money to pay for college. I needed money to pay for Princeton. So as a sophomore in college, I decided to try my first pageant, sort of just to see what it was like, but also to hopefully win some scholarship money. And that's what it really was. I've received medical scholarships from having competed. I went to Miss America in 1999, competed at the Miss America stage, and that was a blast. But It really is an organization made up of amazing women who, you know, really want to further their education and really do some great things.
So did you ever get the sense that, and I don't know if you felt any of this or not, but did you ever get a sense that maybe there were other contestants, that you defeated in Iowa who were maybe a little bit resentful of the fact that, here comes this black woman who, is sort of doing this in her spare time, and yet she defeats everybody. I mean, did you deal with any haters, or was it a pretty positive, experience all the way around?
I have to say it was very positive. And I don't just say this to say it. It was a very positive experience. The first time I competed, I didn't win. Miss Scott County pageant, I was first runner-up, and I came back and did it again, and that's when I won and went to Miss Iowa, and then I won that and went to Miss America. But truth be told, of course, there are haters all over the place, no matter what we're doing, whether it's medicine or whether it's music or pageants or what you do. Boys, look at all the stuff that you do. So one thing I learned along the way is, the pageants, they were fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. But life brings a lot of different folks, especially when you do different things. So,
Wow. Well, I'm really impressed with that, and I think that one of the things you and I were discussing, which I think is common ground that we have in terms of outlook on life, is that you and I both believe that you don't necessarily have to be a one-trick pony. You can pursue all your different passions and still be a successful person and still achieve excellence and all this other stuff. And I know that one of the challenges I ran into as an academic, which I know you ran into as well, is that there are academics who say not only should you focus on one thing, but you should focus on a subset of one thing. So you're not just a doctor, but you are a doctor who specializes in this area of the body, and you're specialized in this area of the body, and that is your expertise, and you can't go outside of that ever. And I think being one-dimensional is something that some people can do pretty well, and they're good at it. I mean, we need people like that, right, who are really going to drill that niche really, really deep, and that's it. But then I think it's okay to have a little bit of breadth in addition to the depth. So I think that's kind of neat. Now I want to ask you about your public work. You are what I would call not just a, well, you're not a PhD, right? Because you're so many other things. I want to make sure I didn't miss something else, because I'm worried that you're going to jump out and tell me you were a Navy SEAL or you kind of done everything, but so you there's a term I use where I say, the black community doesn't need more PhDs, we need more PhDs. So maybe with you, instead of being an MD, you're an MDo, in the sense that you are bringing your expertise back to the world, back to the community, and all communities that are willing to accept the knowledge that you provide. And you're actually, you've done a lot of work on bullying, as a health issue. Now, please, tell us more about the work you've done in that area and how that's gone and what your perspectives are on that.
Sure. So, I give a lot of talks and lectures on issues that relate to adolescents and children. And one of those is childhood bullying. I also speak about substance abuse, and in particular inhalant abuse, which is a really, really common form of substance abuse that goes unnoticed oftentimes. But in terms of bullying, bullying has been it's been in the news a lot, which is a really good thing. But I don't always know that people really understand the true depth that bullying holds. It's not just a social issue. This is actually a medical issue, which is one of the reasons why I talk about it. Studies show that, 30 to 50% of all high school students report having been bullied or being involved in bullying activities. The problem with that, though, is that we have a lot of good medical data that shows us that kids involved in bullying have problems as a result of it. And we're not just talking about the victims. We're talking about the bullies and children who do both, which are also called bully victims. They're sometimes the bully, sometimes the victim. These are children, all of them can have psychological problems, health problems, behavioral problems. Children involved in bullying don't tend to do as well in school. There are also safety concerns. So it goes just beyond, just sort of a social level of, bullying is bad. There are really, truly health consequences, and that's what I focus on.
Interesting. Well, it's funny because, most of us, when we think about bullying, you think of it as something that you simply, that's just part of coming of, it's coming of age sort of thing. It's what everybody goes through. You just deal with it. You can be in your own private little hell and not even tell any adults, because you just sort of think that's what you're supposed to just endure. And when I think about bullying as a health issue, in addition to the psychological damage that comes from that, because you hear about kids that kill themselves and all this other stuff, as a result of bullying. But, I think about the bullying, the things that we don't necessarily think of as bullying that maybe that occur in a lot of our communities, like, you think about South Central Los Angeles or something where there's a lot of violence and bullying takes a whole new level, right?
Sure.
You have bullies that have, machine guns and,
right.
And it's just a level of trauma that we can take for granted as kids, like that's just the way it is, but it's not natural. That's something that gives you post-traumatic stress disorder. When you think you might get shot on your way to school, that's not supposed to be part of the process. So things like getting educated become, they drop way down the priority list. Right. Because you're thinking about, okay, how am I going to make sure I don't die today? So it seems to me that bullying is certainly an important, topic to address. And your fellow Princetonian or Princeton alum, Michelle Obama is really pushing hard on this issue. And, so now what's next for you? What are some of the things that you are working on personally, professionally, publicly, et cetera, that you'd like for people to know about?
Sure. Bullying talks about substance abuse and Halen abuse. These are talks that are really important to me. I'm giving a lot of speeches and workshops to healthcare professionals. You mentioned a lot of important things about bullying. The idea that it used to be thought of as this rite of passage. Boys will be boys, girls will be girls. It's sort of the way it is. I got through it, you will too. But that's really not acceptable anymore because you're right, kids are dying. Not only at the hands of other people, but at the hands of their own. Kids are killing themselves also over this issue. This is a major issue. And you also mentioned sort of bullying taken to the nth degree. You're absolutely right. There's many different levels of bullying behaviors. And oftentimes they extend into criminal behavior. So that's a line that sometimes gets blurred, but it exists. We know that studies actually show that almost about 2/3 of all school shootings have occurred by someone who felt bullied or victimized or things like that. So this is a real issue. So one of my goals and one of my sort of objectives is to really get this word out to people, not only to parents and educators and students, but to physicians, because there are health consequences, psychological consequences, anxiety, depression, antisocial behavior, problems with interpersonal relationships. These are real health concerns. That's why I'm talking to doctors. We need to start asking our young people in physical exams, when we see our parents and our young people coming into the office, we need to ask them about this. Why? Because it's a health issue, just like other health issues. So that's one of my biggest goals, is sort of getting the word out about that. But I also do a number of other philanthropic types of things. I'm on the board of trustees of Walnut Hill School for the Arts. It's an art school that trains young artists, which I'm thrilled and honored to be a part of. I'm actually judging the Miss Iowa pageant in about a week. Yes, I'm really excited. Yes. I'm going back for the first time in a few years, and I'm actually being a judge for the Miss Iowa pageant. So there's a number of things that I'm working on, some articles, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Well, I love it. Well, Dr. Caudle, you have my respect. I like the fact that you have taken your gift of intelligence and you really pushed it to the nth degree. You also told me that both of your parents are teachers. Your father was a high school principal, and you were laughing because it sounded like I was doing psychoanalysis. But typically, when somebody it has engaged in such an extraordinary path, there's usually something right there at the core and at the root. And I can tell that your parents just did a wonderful job in terms of preparing you to not just be the best, but to be at your best, and you've carried that philosophy through life, which has led to your success. So I applaud you, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future because we're going to talk on a regular basis because I love what you do.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you guys for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. Make sure you keep coming back. I'm going to keep bringing you stuff that enlightens you and empowers you and encourages you to see the world in a multitude of ways because, as you know, at yourblackworld.com, there's no one way to be black. If we got black people from Iowa, you probably didn't even know they had black people in Iowa, but we got black people from Iowa and Alaska, and then we got black people from the hood. We can talk about that experience too, but not every black person lives in the hood, and not every black person is a liberal, and then not every black person is goes to church even. I mean, there's a multitude and a range of ways to express who you are as a human being, not even who you are as a black person. So that's the goal. In case you wonder if I have some sort of insidious agenda, that's what it is. So I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. Thank you guys for checking us out. And until we meet again, stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. I'm gone. Peace.